this second session on people management, I want to introduce you to the 10 components of a HR system, a human resource system. Now, many times in small businesses, the human resource system is fairly underdeveloped. And I know it can feel overwhelming to you as a business owner, but it doesn't have to be. You can actually, by building these 10 basic components, have a very manageable but robust people management or HR management system in your business. The good news is today there are a lot of software programs and technology that can help you with this. But before you even jump into technologies, I want you to have these 10 components firmly in your mind so that you understand what makes up an HR system. And I want to just review or actually share these with you right now so you'll have that, and then we'll be referencing these through the remainder of our training sessions. The first component of a good HR system is a hiring process. Some people refer to this as a talent acquisition process. I'm going to just call it a hiring process. In a hiring process, you want to be able to identify prospective employees, and you want to be able to screen them. You want to be able to interview them effectively so that you know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and you want to have a way that you can select the most qualified, most high potential candidates for your company. And then, of course, you need to have a very simple process for actually making them an offer letter. And we'll talk about these things a little bit more as we go along. But the first component I want you to have in mind is the hiring component. The second component is the onboarding component. And onboarding is that first day, that first week, that first month that a new employee is working with you. Now, many times when people think of onboarding, they're thinking of just paperwork. We've got to get, our I-9 signed. We've got to get our documents signed that we have to have for new employees, their W-2s and things like that. And of course, that's part of it. You probably ought to have that done either before or on the first day of their employment. But onboarding is actually more than just paperwork. Paperwork's just one component. I would recommend that for every new employee, you have outlined what are they going to do on their first day on the job, and what are they going to do on their second day, and actually have it down by the day for an entire week so that you know and they know exactly what they're doing, because chances are you're hiring people who've never worked in your business before, in your industry before, and even if they have, they're going to bring other ideas and maybe even bad habits into your company. And so you want to establish them from week one on the right path. In that first week, you ought to be talking about culture and values, and we alluded to that in our module on leadership. And if you haven't watched that module, I encourage you to get it and study it because it'll be very helpful in the strategic part of leadership. But onboarding involves that first day, that first week, and maybe even that first month. And then I encourage business owners to think about the first 60 days even as the onboarding process. In most states, I know in our state here in Texas, you have the opportunity, if this employee is not working out, if they're not a good match, of terminating their employment within a certain period of time before you're liable for unemployment taxes. And so those are some things to keep in mind that might be particular to your state or your local governments. But onboarding is the second component. The third component is compensation and rewards. You need to have a thoughtful way to pay your people. You want to provide a competitive wage as much as you can as a small business. And your compensation, I encourage you to think about, are there ways that we can have either a variable component to our compensation or maybe even a bonusing or rewarding process or capability above and beyond their normal hourly or monthly wage. So a compensation and rewards plan, and we're going to get into that in more detail too as we go through this training. The fourth component is performance management. You want to get people started on the right path. You want to pay them in a way that they're satisfied. And once they're on board, you want to manage their performance so that they perform at a very high level. And so performance management involves having a job description for them, having clear goals or key performance indicators that you want them to meet, and also having a defined evaluation process. Again, we'll get into this in more detail. I just want you to have this component in mind. The fifth component is training and talent development. The way to keep good people for a long period of time is invest in them. Train them, give them opportunities to learn more, to grow more, maybe even to get certain professional designations or certifications, or maybe even create a certification process internally in your own company. That's a great way to do it. But you want your people to be trained, and so you want to map out what that'll look like in your HR system. The sixth component is coaching and correction. You're going to need to have a plan for how you're going to coach your people so that they continue to improve. And when they stray off the path or they move in a direction that is unacceptable, you want to be able to correct them and get them back on the path effectively. The seventh component is conflict resolution. People sometimes don't get along, and you can find yourself at times with conflict internally within your team. If you will define how internal conflict is dealt with when a person first joins your team, it will change the trajectory of that dynamic in your team. So the seventh component is a conflict resolution process. This is how we do it. The eighth component is severance. And there are several ways that people sever from your company. Sometimes they leave you to go to work for somebody else. They just quit. Sometimes you have to let them go. You fire them. Unfortunately, sometimes people leave because of death or disability. And so those are all different reasons, but you need to have a clear path. When somebody does leave your company, here's our checklist. Here are the things we do to part ways as efficiently and as organized as possible. And then the ninth component is compliance. Depending on your state and your governmental laws, you got to make sure you stay in compliance. I've seen many small businesses that did not pay attention to this and got in trouble, and it hurt them tremendously. So we'll talk about that more as we get into it. And the last component is the administrative component. And this is oftentimes where the softwares, the technology can be of help to you to track your records, to keep at proper recording of timesheets, things like that, staying up on your administrative details. So those are the 10 components of a comprehensive HR system. Now, your small business, you can do this. It's not that overwhelming. I know it may feel that way to you right now, but this is doable. And not only is it doable, you need to do it in order to grow and scale your business. Once these processes are in place, once they're documented, and you have your HR system, then you can grow your company. You can add to your team, and you will find that the whole people management process becomes much simpler, much more manageable, and much more effective.